Welcome to the third session of the General Operation Management Module, Planning and Controlling Work. In this session, you'll be able to describe an effective process for implementing work. We'll also be looking at how to organize your personal work effectively, even when dealing with multiple tasks simultaneously. Also, as SMEs, you need to know how to plan, execute, and control a project which involves your team. What does work mean? Work has the following characteristics. There's always a starting point and an ending point. There has to be a specific outcome. For every work, it should require certain resources. And it should also be unique. Unique meaning, although the task can be similar, but different in circumstances and the people involved. Finally, the work should also not be urgent, because you cannot plan for a task that arises unexpectedly. There are certain problems or issues that can arise in our businesses as SMEs. One, insufficient resources. Most times as SMEs, we might not have the resources we need to complete a job or a task. That becomes a problem. Also, and this will lead to what? Unexpected results for us as SMEs. There are also unforeseen difficulties. And all this will result in delay in the work being done. We might have to make changes, and this becomes a problem. We can also have misunderstanding, maybe among team members or among our suppliers or our buyers. This can also result to a problem. There can also be poor coordination among the staffs, as well as ineffective implementation of the job that needs to be done. Most importantly, inefficient use of our resources is the most common problem we have as SMEs. That is why it's important, before any work is being done, we plan ahead. Planning is very important. What is the role of planning? Planning would help us achieve the practical objectives we have set as SMEs before we start a job or a task. It will also provide clear guidelines for us to be able to achieve the job or task to be completed. As SMEs, we'll be able to organize our work effectively and secure our resources proactively. We'll be able to use these resources efficiently, and this will give us a basis for controlling the work process. So, what is the role of controlling? How do we ensure results in the work to be done? After we've planned, how do we control the resources we have? Controlling helps us to ensure our results by what? By identifying and solving problems timely. It also helps us to mitigate risk. With controlling, we can adjust the plan to incorporate changes. That is why we say proper planning plus proper controlling gives us greater possibility for success. The planning aspect is more of defining our objectives. As SMEs, we should define the objectives, then we should also develop a plan around it. Then how do we implement the plan? In the implementation process, we have the planning and the controlling. For the planning, what do we do as SMEs? We define our objectives. With our objectives, we then develop a plan. After the plan has been developed, it is time to implement the plan. During implementation, then we check the progress of the objectives for the plan. This is how we implement control for the task to be done. If we need to make any adjustments, we do, so that we can still achieve the objective for the work or the tasks to be done. That is why we always say proper planning plus proper controlling will give us greater possibility for success. Let's take a look at planning our personal work. As SMEs, we need to prepare goals and objectives we want to achieve personally. What is the work we want to do for the day, or the tasks to be done as well for that day? We need to determine the time we need to complete that task or job at hand. If the time to complete the task is insufficient, then we need to determine the importance of the job at hand. Time management. Time management is very important for SMEs, especially in past planning and controlling our work. No one can manage time. We can only manage the way we use our time. So as SMEs, we are advised to manage our time properly. How do you determine the order of tasks to be done in your businesses? Take, for example, you look at how important, how urgent it is. These are two different ways in which you can classify the order of tasks. If it's urgent, what's the demand? Does it need immediate attention? If it's important, give it considerable significance, or is there a consequence for not achieving the task? A task is urgent when it requires immediate action. A fire, for example, some urgent tasks at work includes sending a purchase order to customers, answering a customer's call, and obtaining approval from a manager for a plan before his or her boss's trip. Urgent tasks must be completed immediately to avoid what? Negative consequences. The importance of a task can be measured by considering the seriousness of the consequences. If that task is not completed, the more serious the consequences, the more important the task. There are tools we need when we are arranging our work schedule. Some of them you already know as SMEs and you're already using right now. Some of the tools we can use: personal calendar. How do we use a personal calendar? We use a calendar to gain an overall picture of all events during the year. Weekly, monthly schedule for organizing tasks within the work or month. Also, we can do a to-do list. Also, a personal digital assistant or a Palm Pilot. What are the principles needed for arranging your work schedule? The first principle is to understand objectives clearly. The planner should know what the objectives are in order to allocate time appropriately. Secondly, know your priorities. Prioritize your tasks as A, B, or C. Thirdly, distinguish between long-term, short-term, and daily plans. Set up a schedule for a long-term and short-term plans. For example, a customer study plan, market research plan, lasting 3 months, organizing a customer's conference for 1 month, and lastly, have a contingency plan. Always reserve 10% of your plan for contingencies. As SMEs, let's look at controlling our personal work. What are the ways in which we can control our personal work? Number 1, review your work schedule. You could do that early in the morning, or at the start of each week, or at the start of each month. Secondly, regularly review work priorities. Thirdly, promptly identify and solve any emerging issues. And finally, adjusting your work schedule to accommodate any changes you might have. Other ways you can control your personal work would be for you to review work results at the end of each day, week, or month. Remove completed tasks from your to-do list. This allows you to avoid confusion. Once you've completed a task, take it off the list and focus on the next one. And lastly, reschedule uncompleted tasks when necessary. The jobs that were unable to be achieved at the end of the day or the week or the month, reschedule them for another time. But I will also leave you with some other tips that can help you control your personal work. Document management. This allows you to maintain a logical document management system that will save you time and prevent you from missing important deadlines. Also, just say no when you do not have enough time to complete a task. And finally, training and delegation. By training employees and delegating tasks to them, you can save so much time for more important work. As SMEs, as managers of our businesses, we need to learn to delegate tasks to be able to save time and be efficient in our businesses. Let's now take a look at the process of planning for a task from start to the end. As you can see on the screen, the planning process starts from defining the work, then to identifying the task, which leads to determining the sequence of the task. Then you allocate your resources and finally plan for implementation and control. The first step of the planning process which is defining work. Work has three basic components. The objective. The objective is what is the expected result of the work. The scope. What are the limits of the work? And thirdly, the constraints. In which conditions the work must be implemented. This has to do with the time and resources for the work to be achieved. The second step is to identify the task. There are three ways to divide a project into smaller tasks. 1, by implementation process. 2, by function. And 3, by deliverables. Let's use an example to understand this better. Using the construction of a new house. By implementation process, we mean develop the plan for the house, analyze the plan, design, then build and sign off. By functions for the construction of a new house, we're looking at the human resources, the material supply, the design as well, also build, supervise, and the customer care. What are the outcomes we expect of the construction of a new house? The foundation, the concrete frame, the build, the finish work, and the decorate. Moving forward to the third step, which is to determine the sequence of tasks. Take a look at the screen. You can see the logical flowchart drawn. Arrange work items logically to form an implementation flowchart. Here are some tips. Find out, are there any other tasks that are independent and could occur in parallel? Reconsider the order. Could it speed up the project if task order was changed? Identify external factors that may affect completion of task. For example, public holidays, lack of resources availability. And the final tip, identify, are there tasks that need to be broken down further that can be combined into larger, more meaning tasks? Let's take a look at the fourth step in the planning process, which is to allocate our resources. How do we determine what tasks our team members are responsible for? For each task, we need to identify who will be responsible, who will be involved, and also who will assume each role. Implementation, review, and make approval. There can be more than one person involved in the implementation of a work item, each with different role. For each work item, one person must assume ultimate responsibility. That person supervises implementation, ensures that deadlines are met, and facilitates communication among team members. The responsibilities of those involved can be parallel or in series. Implementation is not complete until comments have been heard, work has been reviewed, and the item has been approved. So we've come to the end of the session. Remember, at the beginning of this session, we talked about you understanding the effective process for implementing work, how to organize your personal work while dealing with multiple tasks simultaneously, and also how to plan, execute, and control a project which involves a team. It is now time for you to take your end of session activity. We have come to the end of the General Operation Management module. Kindly take your end of module assessment. Thank you.